Welcome back, developers. We are going to build an exciting real-time chat application using modern technologies like Socket.io, Express.js, react.js, and Chakra UI. We'll also set up our project using Byte for fast and efficient development. Trust me, by the end of this tutorial, you will be amazed at what you can create with just few lines of code. You will have a fully functional chat app where users can send and receive messages in real time. Let's dive in. Okay, so first let's look at it, what we are going to build by end of this tutorial. You can see I opened this application in two different tabs. One in normal browser and another one is in incognito mode. Now there is no data, right? So now if I type some messages here, you can see instead I got the message in a different application. From here, if I send, I am getting both. And also you can see there is a time is also attached there, right? And also now if I just try random messages, I want to show one more information. See, when I type the messages, it automatically goes to the bottom of the chat box, right? So if I type, and you can see also like where you are active in that page also, and where you are not active in that page also, right? And for example, you are on the top of the page, and from here I'm sending a message, hey there, and you can see here I'm on the bottom page, that's okay. But where I was on the top of the chat box page, there also I reached the bottom of the page, right? And both are doing in a real time, as you can see there, right? Also the time is attached there. So previously it was 02:01 p.m. Now it's the 02:02 p.m. So you can see the time is also updated, right? Then let's get started. To kick things off, let's create a new folder for our project. We'll call it chat app, right? So let's create mkdir chat app. Okay, then let's move inside it. Let's open this chat app directory by code -r dot. So it will open this directory in VS Code. Cool. Okay. So now we'll do the backend setup first. In the backend directory, all the server logic and communication between the clients will happen here. So first, let's create a folder called chat backend. mkdir chat. Let's move inside it. cd chat backend. Cool. Now do npm init -y to create a package.json file. So here you will see a couple of options, but since we have enabled the flag yes, that means it will create a by default, right? So now if we expand that chat backend, we can see the package.json file here. Now we need to install a couple of dependencies, for example, Express and Socket.io. So let's install it in npm install Express and Socket.io. Sorry, it should not be at. Okay, so we have installed Express and Socket.io. Here, Express will serve as the backbone of our server, and Socket.io will enable the real-time bi-directional communication between users, right? So now inside the chat backend folder, we need to create a file called the server.js. Let's create it. Okay, cool. So here we need to bring a couple of things. For example, express const express is equal to require express, and also http. And also we need to import the server from Socket.io. Okay, so basically this server class from the Socket.io library, which is used to create a WebSocket server, right? We'll use it. Now let's create a app variable. Const app is equal to, we'll use the express function here. So basically this will help us to create an instance of an express application which can be used to define routes and middleware for handling incoming HTTP request. So now let's create a server. Const server is equal to http.create server with app. We create an HTTP server using the HTTP module, passing the Express app as a handler for HTTP request. So the server can now handle both HTTP requests through Express and WebSocket connection via Socket.io. Okay, so now we'll create an Socket.io server that will listen for WebSocket connection on the server, right? So let's create const io is equal to new server. It will take the server that we have created, and also we need to define some course here. So we need to define the origin and the methods. Okay, so methods will be an array. Okay, so here in the second argument, you can see I have passed the object, right? As I said, we need to define a couple of the course, origin, resources, sharing settings here. So basically what it does, allowing WebSocket connection only from the specified origin, right? For example, our front end will be on 5173 since we will use the byte, right? And it allows only get and post HTTP method for cross origin requests since we will use just only get and post, right? So we can define the origin here, though we don't have any front end application, but you can add now HTTP localhost 5173. So this would be our port number, like our front end application will be running on this port. So it depends. If your front end application running on 3000, simply you can add the 3000 here. So completely it's a variable. It can be dependent on your front end origin actually, right? And in the methods we will specify get and post since we will use only these two. So we have created a new Socket.io server here. Okay, now we need to create an event listener here. For example, when a new WebSocket connection is established with the server, right? So how we can do that? It's just simple. So basically what we will do, we'll use io.on and it will watch the connection and it will take a callback function. We'll get a socket as a parameters here, and we can console log here, console.log a user connected basically, and we can use socket.id, right? We'll get ID since our user will be the unique user, right? Okay, so as I said here, the io.on connection functions, even it's a event listener, is triggered when a new WebSocket connection is established within the server, right? And each connected client gets a unique socket object, and socket ID is used to uniquely identify the that specific connection. So we are actually logging a message. Here you can see a user is connected with the socket.id. Now within this object, we need to listen two more things. We need to listen the sent message and the disconnected one, right? So now what we can do here, we need to listen the send message, right? So what we can do, we can write this socket.on, we'll resend this send message, and again it will be a callback function. We'll get a message here, and what we'll do, emit that message, io.emit, and we'll send as a receive message, RECIPE and SSG, receive message, and we'll send the message, right? Cool. So basically this send message event from a connected client, right? When a client sends a message, the server listens for this event and retrieves the message data and then emits a receive message event to all connected clients using io.emit. So this broadcasts the message to everyone in real time. As I said, I need to listen one more things. So let's listen the disconnect one. Socket.on, it will be disconnect, and simply as we get a callback function, we can actually log a text here, console.log a user disconnected. Cool. When a user connect, we'll see a log. When a user disconnect, we'll see a log. And in the meantime, if there are any new messages come, we are listening it and we are actually broadcasting to all the connected user with a receive message. and the message object. Cool. So finally, we need to instruct the server to listen for incoming connection on any port, right? For example, we can write a 4000 port, right? So let's do it. Server.listen. We can define any port here. For example, we can do 4000 and a callback function here. And we can actually write a text here. Server listening on the port 4000. So done. We are done here in the backend. So here, once the server starts, a message is logged to the console indicating it's running and ready to accept a connection on that port, right? Basically, in our case, is the 4000, right? Cool. So with that, we have completed the backend setup. Simply, we have installed the two dependencies, Express and Socket. We have created a server.js file and we have created a HTTP server. We have actually added a couple of socket event listener here, the connection, send message, and the disconnect one, right? And when we will run at actually node server.js, we will see, okay, for example, you can see here, right? Chat backend node server.js. Okay, so you can see when I run this node server.js, the server is listening on port 4000, and you can see a user is connected here because I have run this application in two different places here. You can see here and here. I mean, one is in the normal browser and another one is in here, right? So that's why, because the backend is same, right? So that's why we are seeing here the two user is connected, but it's not actually. Okay, so that's why you are saying a user is connected two times. Cool, right? So let's work on the front end part now. So those who don't know about the Byte, I can give you a glimpse. Actually, Byte is a blazing fast tool to spin up your front end project, especially with React.js. So let's create our front end inside the chat folder, right? So let's close it, the backend one. Okay, so create a Byte project. What we can do, we can run this command npm create Byte at latest, right? Once we run this command, we'll see a couple of options here. Okay, so it is saying to give a project name. We can see chat hyphen frontend, and it's saying select a framework. So we will work on that obviously with React. And we'll go with the vanilla JavaScript. Cool. So our project is created. Here you can see chat frontend, right? Bare minimum setup is ready. Now what we can do, we need to install a couple of dependencies here. Okay. So here we need to install a couple of dependencies. Here you can see we need to install Socket IO client, Chakra UI React, emotion style, and the frame emotion, right? So let's install it. Okay, so we have installed that all dependencies. So here Socket.io client will connect the React frontend to our Socket.io server, and the Chakra UI is a beautiful and accessible component library that will style our app actually. Basically, that's it. So now let's start modifying the frontend application from app.jsx. Let's close all the backend file, and we can go inside src and app.jsx, right? So it's a simple Byte application. Let's remove all the things and we can create a new component, RAFC for the shortcut, and you can see we'll get a beautiful functional component here, right? So basically we'll import a couple of things from Chakra UI here. So the first one is import box and the Chakra provider from Chakra UI React. Actually, Chakra UI React. Now we'll use this here, Chakra provider, and we'll use the box inside that. Box. Cool. And we can define a couple of styles here. For example, with by default, we can define as 100 vertical width, and we can do a padding horizontal, which is the 5px, right? So we can define it. So basically inside the box, we'll add the chat box component. So we need to create a component directory inside the src. Let's create it, components, and we'll create a file here, which is the chatbox.jsx. Cool. rafce, and we'll import the chatbox here. Cool. So this is our bare minimum app.jsx setup, right? And definitely we can run it by yarn run dev, and our server will be run on HTTP localhost 5173. And as I said, whenever you see the origin is located on 5173, it depends, right? You can modify it at the origin, right? So make sure to add the same origin here in the origin here. So HTTP localhost 5173, which is the front-end application origin. I hope I explain it to you properly. Okay, cool. So now if we see here in the browsers, it should not have any fancy thing. It's a basically chat box, nothing else, right? Nothing else. So let's start the designing our chatbox.jsx component. Before that, I just want to mention one thing here. This Chakra provider, this wraps our app with the Chakra's styling context. Nothing else. It's actually a Chakra provider. It gives us from the Chakra UI React. And the chat box, actually this will be our main chat component where the actual messaging and logic will be there. So that's why we separated that provider and the main component differently. So the chat box will coming from the component / chat box and the provider that we have set up in our app.jsx file. So now let's move it to the chatbox.jsx. So here I need a lot of things, so that's why I imported a couple of information here. You can see first I imported chevron right icon from the Chakra UI icons, and I imported a lot of styling things from Chakra UI React. For example, you can see the box, button, flags, input, text, BS, P stake, and use color mode value, and also a couple of hooks from the React, use effect, use step, use state, and the IO from the Socket IO client. So this information we'll use in a couple of minutes in our chatbox.jsx component. So now we need to establish a connection with our backend socket. So what we can do, const socket is equal to, we will use this IO function here, and we'll actually specify the origin here. So our backend is running on the 4000. If you just remember, localhost 4000, right? Okay, cool. So I have established a connection with the backend socket, and make sure your backend URL is running on localhost HTTP localhost 4000, right? So let's check it one more time, which is 4000. Cool. So now we have imported our necessary information. We have established a socket here. Now let's work on the core logic, which is where we'll add the messages and all kind of necessary information here, right? So let's bring a couple of state here. So I have added here a couple of states. One is for messages. So here this messages state, which is an array, it will contain all the messages, and here input basically the input box where user will type and send messages, right? So this is for the input state, and the user ID. As I said, every user should be unique in our application. So we need to actually store the user ID, we need a state. So that's why we have created the user ID state. So here I have used this actually the hook use color mode value hook from the Chakra UI React, and I have specified the background color and border color. It's simple. Basically it's the gray 50 and the gray 700, right? Or same gray 200 and the gray 600. Nothing complicated here. So now let's start designing our chat page, right? And here I will remove this div. and I will use the flags from the Chakra UI. Here I will explain what I did here. So basically it's simple. So here this flags component make our chat box component to the center of the page. Here you can see the style is a justify content center, align item center. I believe all of you know about these two CSS about the justify content and align item center. There is nothing special here. We use these two CSS to make our chat box component to center of the page, right? And we have defined a minimum height, which is the 100 vertical height, width is 100%, define BG color, and padding is 4. So here I took a box from Chakra UI React, And the styles, I hope there is nothing complicated. You can understand what I have added here. So all the source code will be available on the GitHub repository. I will share this repository on the description below. So actually, I'm not writing these styles, these CSS styles in manually because it will take a lot of time and there is nothing to understand about this one. So you can grab this CSS from my source code and we can, concentrate our focus on the, core logic of the chat applications. I hope you understand that. So here I have taken a B stack here. You can see I have defined a couple of styles here. So here what I want to focus here about the scroll bar. So now default scroll is a bit different in the browsers, right? Which is the upbeat, bold, and with this use. So we have modified the scroll bar, which is, you can see here the width is 4px and WebKit scroll bar track is 6, and we have changed the color also a bit. Nothing else. It's just scroll bar CSS. If you want, you can modify it. And other one is simply CSS. As you can see here, flex 1 with 100%, padding 4, spacing Y, overflow Y, auto, right? And this, again, this is for the just scroll bar styles. You can grab it from my source code actually. And inside the B stack, all the messages will be printed here inside the B stack. So this is, you can see, this is the message container B stack. And inside that, we will print all the messages. So before going to the next CSS styles, I mean for the messages one, let's focus on two more logical part now. Let's implement the socket real-time one. Then we should actually work on the rest of the UI part, I mean the design part. So let's focus on the functionality here. So here, see, as soon as the user landed on the Jetbox page, I mean our front-end application, somehow we need to figure out the user ID, right? Unique user ID, so that we can actually differentiate the users, right? So as I said, we'll store the user ID in the session storage. So what we can do, whenever the application is loaded, I mean any of the user will be landed in our application, at the time we'll see the user is actually exists the user ID in the session storage or not. If exists, then we'll use this user ID to set the user ID state here. Otherwise, we'll create a new user ID, save it in the session storage, and also at the same time, we need to update the set user ID state, right? So let's do it first. Let's write a use effect. Use effect. So here, the dependency will be empty. So it will run only the first time. And we can actually get the stored user ID first. Stored user ID from the session storage dot get item, which is the user ID. So it could be undefined, it could be null, either, or it could be actual value, right? We don't know, but we need to check. We need to check if no stored user ID, user ID, what we can do, we need to create a new one, right? So stored user ID is equal to, we'll need a couple of actually, functionality here to create a new user ID. And after that, we'll set session storage dot set item user ID and the stored user ID. Cool, right? And here, and then we'll actually get the user ID and we'll set it in the set user ID state, which is stored user ID. And here, the functionality will be create a new user ID. We'll use a function called math.random. Basically, it will be to string, and we need, we'll use the 36 here inside that, and we'll get the substring of it. Substring will be 7. So basically, what it does here, let me explain to you. So here, math.random, actually it creates a random decimal number, right? So we are converting it to a base 360 string. Right here, we are converting it to a base 360 string format. So it will be a combination of letters and numbers. And we are taking the substring starting from the 7th character to create a short unique ID, right? So that's how our stored user ID will be generated here. Cool. Now we check the user ID on the session storage first. If there does not exist, then we are creating new one. Otherwise, we are setting the existing one, right? Cool. Now we need to set up a listener on the socket object for getting the incoming messages here. So inside the use effect, what we can do, we can set up a listener. So the socket object that we have created here on the top, right here. So the socket dot on, right? And we will listen the receipt message. And if you remember, we are actually emitting that receipt message from the server, right? So now we will actually listen that in a front end. And it will be callback function. We will get a message object here. Right? Now what we will do, we will use the set messages state, right? Set message state is, it's a state. Here you can see it's a array of items. So what we can do, we basically get all the previous message first, previous message here, right? And we'll append all the previous message first, and then we'll add the new one, right? So by doing that, these set messages will contain all the previous messages also along with the new one. And finally, we need to clean up the use effect by returning a function, callback function. So here we'll off the socket.off. Basically, we can do message, right? So cool. So we have cleaned up our use effect. We have to listen the receive message, and we have stored the user ID. Now I want to implement another important functionality. If you remember on the first part of the demo, whenever a new message is come, if you notice our actually chat box is coming to the bottom of the page, right? Whenever any new message is come, your chat box is automatically coming to the bottom of the page for the both end, sender and receiver. So we need to develop that functionality, right? To achieving this functionality, we'll use the help of the useRef hook, right? So let's create a useRef. So let's define it here. Const messages and ref is equal to useRef. UseRef. We need to bring the useRef. So now here the messages and ref will refer to a specific DOM element at the end of the message list, right? So as I said, we will render all the messages inside the B stack, right? So here, for example, here will be all our messages, right? So now after the messages, end of the messages list, we'll use a DOM element called the div. So this div will refer the messages and ref, right? So what we can do, we can use this ref and we can add the messages and ref. Cool. So now, okay, that would be the self-closing this. Cool. Now here we'll render all the messages, and the end of the messages list, these messages and ref DOM is present. That means we can use that functionality, right? Now let's think when we should trigger these messages and ref. Whenever any new incoming messages come, right? At that time we need to actually trigger that, and we need to view these messages and ref to the UI, right? So what we can do for that, since it needs some side effect, right? As I said, this is the messages list, right? Whenever messages list update, at that time we need to trigger this one, right? So let's add a use effect. So the dependency will be messages, and here I'll write the messages and ref, and I will get the current of it, and I'll use one of the function called scroll into view. Scroll into view, right? And it will be a function, right? And here we can define a couple of options here. For example, the behavior. So the behavior would be smooth. It scrolls the reference DOM element into view, right? This scroll into view. So the argument behavior smooth means that The scroll will happen with a smooth animation instead of instantly jumping to the element. So now if I want to give a summary of that, so whenever the messages array changes, likely when a new message is sent or received, this use effect will trigger, right? And it scrolls the element referenced by the messages unwrap, which is presumably the last messages in the chat, into view smoothly, ensuring that chat interface always shows the most recent messages at the bottom. So inside the B stack, as I said, we will render all the messages inside that. So I have actually mapped all the messages and I have used a flags here, you can see. And here, basically, if you remember, there is a left and right? So if the message is sent to the current user, and you can see the message ID is equal to the user ID, that means this is the current user, that means the me, right? So at that case, we will use the flag send, otherwise it will be the flag start, that means the other users, right? As simple as that. We used a flags for, to showing the message text. And one more thing that I want to mention here over to showing the timestamp. So we need a function. That's why I actually, commented that line. We need a function. The function name is a format timestamp. So I'll get back to it a bit later. But before that, I just want to focus on to send the message part. And then I will focus on to show the timestamp, right? This one. I hope this part is clear. So what we did so far, this is the structure of the chat box page, right? I just want to focus on the messages list. We rendered all the messages here. So the left and right, it decided by this one, this message.userid is equal to the user ID. If it is same, then it's a flag send, otherwise it's a flag start, right? And below we use the messages and wrap, which is actually referencing to use wrap. So whenever any new messages coming to our messages state, at that time we actually triggered the use effect to view the last messages in the UI, right? And we use the smooth scrolling, right? Which is the behavior smooth. This one, right? Cool. So now let's focus on to, send the message, right? Okay. Below of the div where we are referencing the message and ref, we have added flags here. You can see to show the input and the enter button, right? It's simple. Basically, we use an input here and we use a button. The button is showing simply an icon, and we need to define this send message function. We didn't do it yet, so that's why it is showing an error, but let it be. We'll come into a bit later, right? Okay. This is the steps. I don't want to explain it, what I did here. But here I just want to focus two more things here. First, since we have added a state here, you can see the input and set input, as I said, right? To store whatever user type, we'll store it in the input and set input state. That what we did, right? The value is input, and on change, we are storing these things. Now, so, and the another one, what I want to focus, which is the on key press. And on key press means when you are on the input is selected. At that time, if you enter, if you write whatever it is, if you write anything, and if you press the enter button, right? At that time, we'll call the send message function. Instead of like by clicking on the button, we can do it same. Either way, we can click on the button, or we can actually press the enter button to send the message, right? So I hope it's clear to you. Let's define the send message function. Let's define it. So in the send message, first we trim the input, right? If there is no text, for example, if there is a lot of empty space in the message, we are actually trim that, right? And if there is at least one input exists at that time, actually we'll emit that message to the server, right? Otherwise, we will not let go user to emit that messages, right? So as you can see here, messages is an object, and here we are defining three things: user ID, text, and the timestamps. Okay, so timestamps means the current time, and the text, whatever user is writing, and user ID, and which is whatever we are saving in the session storage and updating inside the state. You can see this is the state, right? That we are updating here in the use effect here, set user ID, which is the stored user ID. It can come from the session storage or whatever we can generate by this method random, right? So three things we are sending in the messages object, which is user ID, text, and the timestamps. And if you go in the messages list where we are rendering, you can see that message.userid, that what we are deciding that the message box will be the flex end or the flex start, right, from here. And also like the same goes for here to deciding the background color, right? If I send, my background color would be completely blue, right? Because this is the current user, right? And for others, it will be different, like the gray 200, right? Otherwise, it will be the blue 500 for me. And the timestamps, right? Timestamp, as I said, I need to, define a function. That's why, because it was throwing an error. That's why I actually, commented that part, right? So let's define this function. And I believe you understand about this one. It nothing else. It's a simple on-click function. Oh, okay. Just I need to explain this part. What we are doing, once our message object is ready, we are emitting that message. We are emitting this message to the backend server. If we go to the server.js, if you remember, I have listening a send message, right? I have listening a send message here. Send message, socket.on. It's listening the send message to come a new message here, right? So that means we are emitting the send message from here. Let me check actually the type, send message, both. Okay, cool. So whenever we are getting a message, we are broadcasting this message to all the connected users, right? Which is the receive message. So here we are emitting the send message with the message object, that we have created, and we are sending to the backend server. And the backend server will take care to send this message, the new coming message, to all the connected user, which is known as the broadcasting, right? Cool. So, and after that, whenever it done the meeting, and then we set the set input as a empty, right? Cool. So last one more thing left, which is this format timestamps, right? So let's define this function. 0 here, const. So here we are receiving timestamp as a parameter, right? And we are converting this timestamp to a local new date time object, right? And we have defined a couple of actually options here, which is hour and minute. So basically two digit means, for example, if we get a 1:30 p.m. here, for example 1:30 p.m. so it will be converted to something like that, 01:30 p.m. So basically it will actually hour and minute, it will be actually the 01, 2 digit, right? For example, if it is just 1 p.m. and 3, it will be the 03. That's how it will work. We have defined this 2 digit for that reason. We needed this function format timestamps. I hope it's all clear to you, whatever we have written here, right? Let's save it and let's try to, okay, I have got a couple of problem here. I don't know what is this. Okay, let me rerun, right? First, let's try to run chat backend. Okay, so, right? So we'll write it no server.js. Okay. Oh my god, what happened? Oh my god, continuously it was actually connecting. That means something went wrong. Let me check the front end code first. So I found one problem here. It is saying Chakra UI icons is not found. So let me install it first, and then we'll check one by one. We'll resolve it one by one. No problem. We are doing the live debugging, right? So let's install this one first. Try to run it. Okay. It is running on. Okay, cool. But it should get the full space, right? Here it should come here. I don't know what happened. Okay, so let me try to check the UI one more time. So here you can see this footer, right? It is showing in the top of the chat box page, right? To prevent that problem, what we can do, we can wrap this B stack to inside the another B stack. For example, like this B stack, right? That has to be, I need to close it, right? And here inside this B stack, what I can do, I can wrap this whole B stack, the whole B stack here. So I believe now it should work. Let's try to check. Okay, cool. But here the chat is coming, but it is still on the top of the page, right? So let's try to debug one more time. So we made a simple mistake here, which is the CSS related mistake. So this the footer, right? This is the footer. I mean the important button that has to be inside the below stack, not here, because let me tell you why it should be inside outside of that B stack, because this B stack taking all the height of that page, right? Because it should take all the height, right? It should not take it should not show the message footer on the top of the chat box page, right? So now we can see it is showing on the below of the page, right? The bottom of the chat box, right? Cool. So just be careful about the CSS one. If you need the source code, you will definitely be find on the GitHub. Just keep in mind, right? Now let's focus on that, the backend part, why it is actually we are getting continuous calling of that user is connected. We need to figure it out, right? Let's debug it. So I don't know, I just restart my backend server and it was properly working. So if you face the same problem, just try to restart your backend first try to run the backend one, right? And then try to run the front end one. So I just restart my backend one, and as it is working properly, no server.js, and a server is listening on port 4000 and 2 user is connected, because there are actually 2 applications is running on the browsers, right? Let's try to send a message, hello, boom. Okay, we can see here, right? This hello is showing here and here. For me, it's a blue. For others, it's a BG200, right? And if I send from here, this is working correctly. Yo, cool. Test, boom. You can see it is automatically reaching to the bottom of the page, right? For example, I'm on the top of the page, hello here. Now if I try to write 1, 2, 3, boom, it is automatically coming to the bottom of the page whenever a new message is actually added on the messages state, right? That So in the messages state, whenever any new messages is added, at that time we are triggering this message and wrap, and it is going to the bottom of the message list, right? That's how it is working now. So if I test, I think all is working all the time, and text messages is working properly, right? Again, all the code will be available on the GitHub, right? And the description box, you will find the repository link. If you want to get the all the static design, you can get it, but I will highly recommend you to write the logic in yourself. Don't copy the logic part, right? You can copy the style part, the CSS part from here, but try to understand how things are working. So congratulations, you have successfully built a real-time chat application using Socket.io, Express, react.js, and Chakra UI, and the powered by Vite, right? You can now extend this app further by adding features like chat rooms, message persistent, or even users authentication, right? If you enjoyed this tutorial, make sure to like and subscribe for more coding content. See you in the next time. Thank you.